On the last episode of The Truth About HS1, I'm so excited that we finally built a fixed link to mainland Europe. Can you believe we just built the longest underwater tunnel in the world? But is anyone else starting to notice a bottleneck forming on tracks into London?
That's why we told France and Belgium that we would build a direct high-speed line to London. Railtrack will get on that project pretty soon.
Right. Bottom line is, I have a lot on my plate. Yeah, and I'm not getting enough government support for it all.
You don't get too back out of this one railtrack. We already invested billions into this project. Your rail lines are a nightmare for the Eurostar. How can we offer reliable international high-speed service when our trains are stuck behind freight and regional trains? You need to sort this out.
Right, but it is like £2.5 billion. Where am I supposed to get that money?
Figure it out.
Please exit through the rear door.
Doors open.
We gather here today to honor the life of Railtrack. Railtrack was a beautiful company. Yes, they had their fair share in scandals and disinvestment, but they were just doing their job. The best job they could without any public funding. Such a shame. You were taken too soon from us, brother. Yeah, so Railtrack freaking died. Railtrack racked up $7.1 billion in debt. This is because they weren't able to fully pay back all of their bonds by the time they collapsed. This is something I would like to clarify. Bonds are not free money. They aren't like government grants. The company or authority has to pay it back. This means that companies like Brightline are actually in debt. It's the equivalence of taking out a student loan. It's like, oh, cool.
Now pay me with your soul.
Railtrack actually got some government funding towards the end, but instead of using it to actually, pay back the victims of the Hatfield derailment or improve their rail infrastructure so another Hatfield derailment wouldn't happen, they decided to use around £137 million to pay back their shareholders. This is exactly why private companies should not be operating public services. Public services should be for the people, not for the shareholders. Instead of using the $0.1 billion in government bailout to do the morally correct thing, they decided to use it to pay back their shareholders, despite still being in $7 billion of debt. At that point, put the game controller down, buddy. You lost. Receivership is the only option. Luckily, in order to end this madness,
privatization would cause inevitable problems with safety, and there'd be only one remedy.
Let me make it crystal clear to any privatization of the railway system, which, where on arrival of a Labour government, will be quickly and effectively dealt with the full support of the community and be returned to public ownership, because that's what
the British government ended up buying all Railtrack's debt and decided to finally complete the project on their own. All of Railtrack's interest was bought by the London and Continental Railways. This totaled to around £295 million, with a new private company that's non-profit, with no shareholders, subsidized by the government, and owned by the government, set to operate and maintain the entire line. That's a complicated way to say a government agency. Anyways, introducing Network Rail. Network Rail Limited purchased Railtrack plc from the Railtrack Group plc for £500 million. Railtrack plc was then renamed to Network Rail Infrastructure Limited. In other words, Railtrack wasn't actually dead, it just faked its death so that people could forget what happened. Of course, this only tricked the main media and didn't get them out of any previous legal battles. Let me put this another way. The British government was so disappointed in the creation of the private company that it ended up renationalizing the private company. This was not easy. The Human Rights Act in the UK requires the UK government to pay back each shareholder the average rate per share of the company that the government is taking over. At the market price, Railtrack shares were around £3 per share. This is because the share value dwindled after the Hatfield derailment.
It don't go down.
Robert, it goes down.
No, it don't.
It do go down.
Oh!
This would only require a government takeover of around £2 billion. Unfortunately, the humans were given rights. Following the Human Rights Act, the government would have to pay shareholders £10 per share. This is because this was the average value per share. This would put the price tag of a government takeover at over £6 billion. Add the debt that the government would have to take on, and that's over £10 billion. You can fund the rest of the iOS segment for California High-Speed Rail with that money. At this point, the government thought, how do we work around the Human Rights Act? How do we avoid compensating the shareholders the full amount that they deserve under our law that we created? Then they said, I know. Maybe if we can prove that the company isn't insolvent, as in, we can prove that the company is actually able to pay back the debt, then we don't have to pay the shareholders the fair value that's determined by the Human Rights Act. This surprisingly worked. The High Court accepted the fact that the company was not insolvent, leading the way for the government to only have to pay Railtrack shareholders £2.60 per share. With the new government-owned company created, Network Rail agreed to pay LCR £80 million for the right to operate and maintain High-Speed 1. Just less than a year later, Section 1 of the Channel Tunnel Rail Link was completed. See? They completed the project, and all it took was actual government spending. Anyways, Eurostar trains immediately started running on the segment, cutting the entire journey time by approximately 20 minutes. On top of that, the new high-speed line greatly increased efficiency, as high-speed trains spent less of their time stuck behind regional trains. Along the segment, there are plenty of unique structures, one of them being the Medway Rail Viaduct. This 0.81 mile long structure spans the River Medway. The spans on the viaduct were designed to mimic the pre-existing M2 motorway. The approach spans are spaced 40.5 meters apart, while the central navigation span has a length of 152 meters. While the railway was being built, the M2 motorway was also being widened. This is why there are 3 viaducts going across the River Medway. Leftover dirt, excavated from High-Speed 1's North Downs Tunnel, a tunnel that I'm going to talk about in a little bit, was used as embankment for the M2 motorway. Pretty resourceful. The North Downs Tunnel, or the Bluebell Hills Tunnel, North Downs Tunnel sounds better, is 2 miles long and has a diameter of 20 meters, and which, at the time of its completion, was considered to be the deepest twin-track railway tunnel ever constructed in the UK. This tunnel was not easy to build, as the geology that the tunnel was bored through was mostly chalk bed. Because of this, the tunneling techniques were changed multiple times throughout the construction. This actually sped up the construction and led the tunnel to be completed $5 million under budget. The great engineering of this tunnel lets high-speed trains travel at 186 miles per hour inside the tunnel. This made it also one of the fastest train tunnels in not just the UK, but in all of Europe. Not too bad for a country who's building high-speed rail for the first time. Fun fact, in the last California High-Speed Rail episode I said, there's this myth floating around that SNCF abandoned California High-Speed Rail. Technically this is not true. A company, which SNCF just so happens to be the largest shareholder, is designing the Madera to Merced section. Did you know that that same company worked on High-Speed 1? They were a part of the Rail Link engineering group. Is it just me, or is it satisfying when everything clicks together? So that's it for this video. I'll do episode 3 when we reach 3K. So for you UK viewers, you better subscribe. With that being said, if I earned your like and subscription, I love you. And if you got this far in the video, thanks for watching.
Doors open.